The notification lit up his phone at 2:47 a.m. I wasn't snooping, I was getting water. His phone was face up on the nightstand, charging, and the screen flashed bright enough to catch my eye from across the room. "Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Miss you already." 3 heart emojis, a name I didn't recognize. My hand froze on the water glass. My heart didn't just sink, it stopped. Then it started racing so hard I thought he'd wake up from the sound of it pounding in my chest. He was right there, lying on his back, mouth slightly open, completely at peace. The man I'd trusted for 12 years, the man I'd built a life with, sleeping like he didn't have a care in the world. I should have woken him up, screamed, thrown the phone at his head, demanded answers right then and there. But I didn't. Something in me went ice cold, calm, calculated. I picked up his phone, carefully, quietly, used his thumbprint while he slept, the same thumb that had put a ring on my finger. The messages loaded, weeks of them, months, hotels, meetups during his work trips, intimate details I'll never be able to scrub from my memory, plans for a future that apparently didn't include me. I took screenshots, sent them to myself, deleted the evidence from his sent folder, cleared the notifications. Then I put the phone back exactly where it was, screen down this time. I slid back into bed beside him. My body was shaking, but I didn't let myself cry. Not yet. Crying was a luxury I couldn't afford. He shifted in his sleep, threw his arm over me like he'd done 1,000 times before, like he loved me, like he wasn't destroying everything we'd built. I lay there in the dark, staring at the ceiling, listening to him breathe, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to react. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction of tears, of confrontation, of letting him spin this into some story where I was crazy or paranoid or overreacting. I was going to be smart about this. He thought I didn't know. That was his first mistake. Looking back, I can see exactly when things started to unravel. It wasn't dramatic. There was no explosive fight, no obvious breaking point. It was slow, subtle, the kind of gradual shift you don't recognize until you're standing in the wreckage wondering how the hell you ended up there. We'd been married 12 years. 12 mostly good years, I thought. We had our rhythm. Friday movie nights, Sunday breakfast in bed, those stupid inside jokes that weren't even funny anymore but still made us laugh. We weren't some fairy tale, but we were solid. Or at least that's what I'd convinced myself. Around 8 months before that 2:47 a.m. text message, something changed. He started working late. A lot. Big project, he said. Important client. Tons of pressure from the higher-ups. I understood, or tried to. I'd always been the supportive wife. That's what you do in a marriage, right? You give them space when they need it. You trust them. God, I trusted him. Then the password changes started. His phone, the one that used to sit face up on the counter while he showered, suddenly got a new passcode. Work made us update everything for security, he explained with a casual shrug. New company policy. Fine, made sense. But then it was his laptop, his tablet, even his email. Everything locked down tight, protected, hidden. He started coming to bed later, said he needed to decompress with some TV after those long workdays. But when I'd join him on the couch, he'd quickly switch the channel or snap his laptop shut. Just boring work emails, you'd fall asleep in 5 seconds. The distance between us grew wider every day. We stopped really talking. Our conversations became nothing but logistics. Did you remember to pay the water bill? What time's your meeting? Can you grab milk on your way home? When I tried to reconnect, suggest a date night, ask real questions about his day, reach for him in bed, I hit a wall. He was tired, stressed out, not in the mood. Work was absolutely killing him. I told myself this was normal. Marriage has seasons, right? Rough patches happen. Every couple goes through them. This was just temporary. I ignored the way his face would light up at his phone, then go blank when he noticed me watching. I ignored the new cologne that appeared in our bathroom. I ignored how he suddenly started caring about his appearance again. Nicer shirts, better haircuts, actually ironing his pants. I ignored that sick feeling in my gut that woke me up at 3 a.m., the one that whispered, "Something's very wrong here." Because acknowledging it meant dealing with it, and I wasn't ready for that. I wanted to believe in us, in him, in the 12 years we'd invested in building this life together. But that night, that 2:47 a.m. notification shattered everything. The next morning, I watched him get ready for work like I was observing a complete stranger. He hummed in the shower, smiled at his reflection while fixing his hair, kissed my forehead on his way out the door like it was just another normal day. "Love you," he said, grabbing his keys. "Love you too," I heard myself say automatically. The door clicked shut behind him, and I sat frozen at our kitchen table with my coffee getting cold, staring at nothing. Then I snapped into focus. I started with our shared iCloud account, the one we'd set up years ago for convenience. Shared photos, shared calendar, the whole married couple digital ecosystem. He'd probably completely forgotten I still had access to everything. I opened his phone backup files. Every deleted message was there, preserved, recoverable. Messages to her, making plans, flirting, inside jokes that should have been ours, and complaints about me, how I didn't get him anymore, how our marriage had become comfortable but boring, how he felt trapped in the routine. My hands were shaking, but I kept scrolling. I had to see it all. Next, I pulled up our joint bank accounts, joint checking, joint savings, transactions I'd never scrutinized before because we trusted each other, because that's what partners do. And there they were, clear as day. Hotel charges in downtown, restaurants we'd never been to together, the expensive kind he always said were too pricey when I suggested them. Cash withdrawals scattered throughout the months, $200 here, $350 there, all of them marked ATM with zero explanation. Flowers from that boutique place on Fifth Avenue. I couldn't remember the last time he'd bought me flowers. Then I saw this, $487 at Tiffany's. My stomach turned. Our anniversary that year? He'd taken me to Applebee's because he forgot to make reservations anywhere nice. That jewelry damn sure wasn't for me. I spent the entire day building my case, screenshots of everything, downloaded PDFs of every bank statement from the past year. I even found receipts crumpled in his car's center console when I cleaned it out one afternoon. I created a folder on my personal laptop, password protected, backed up to a cloud account he didn't know existed. Every lie, every transaction, every piece of evidence, organized, dated, documented. I didn't cry once while doing this. There wasn't time for tears. This wasn't about feelings anymore. This was survival. This was making absolutely certain that when the time came, I'd have everything I needed. He came home that evening carrying Thai takeout and wearing his best smile. "Figured I'd grab us dinner," he said, kissing my cheek like everything was perfectly fine. "I thought you seemed a little stressed this week. Thought I'd help out." I smiled right back, thanked him, sat down and ate pad thai across from the man who was systematically betraying me, asked him how his day went. He had absolutely no clue I'd spent 8 hours uncovering every single lie he'd told.
The affair was devastating enough, but what I discovered next made my blood run cold. I'd been digging through bank statements for about a week, documenting the affair-related expenses, hotels, dinners, gifts. But one Tuesday afternoon, something caught my eye that stopped me mid-scroll. Our savings account balance looked wrong. Way wrong. Last I'd checked, maybe 2 months prior, we'd had around $43,000 saved. Years of discipline, automatic transfers every paycheck, money we'd earmarked for a down payment on a bigger house. Our future, sitting there growing slowly but surely. I pulled up the current statement. $27,000. I stared at the screen, convinced I was reading it wrong. Refreshed the page, checked again. Still $27,000. $16,000 had vanished. My chest tightened as I started tracing backward through the transactions. The withdrawals weren't obvious, nothing huge that would have triggered an alert or caught my attention during a casual glance. He'd been smart about it, calculating. $2,200 transferred to his personal checking, then 3 days later, $1,800. A week after that, $2,500, small enough to fly under the radar, frequent enough to add up fast. Each transfer was followed by ATM withdrawals or charges I didn't recognize. High-end restaurants in neighborhoods we never went to, boutique hotels, even a weekend rental car, luxury model, of course. He'd been systematically draining our future, betting I'd never notice. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut, but I kept digging because something told me this rabbit hole went deeper. I logged into our retirement accounts next, the ones we'd opened together 7 years ago when we'd finally gotten serious about planning ahead. We'd both committed to maxing out our contributions. It was our agreement, our non-negotiable. Except he'd renegotiated without telling me. 6 months ago, he'd dropped his 401k contribution from 15% down to 3%, just like that. Thousands of dollars in lost savings, thousands more in missed employer matching, compound interest we'd never get back, all so he'd have more cash in his paycheck every month, for her. Then I found the loan paperwork buried in his email inbox, a $12,000 loan borrowed against his retirement account, the kind of thing we'd always said we'd never do unless it was a genuine emergency, medical crisis, family disaster, something catastrophic. I checked the date on the loan approval, 3 days before his work conference in Austin last fall, the one where he'd been too busy with client meetings to call me goodnight, the one where I'd seen charges for a couple's massage and a 5-star steakhouse. He'd borrowed $12,000 from our future to bankroll a romantic weekend with his mistress. I actually had to stand up and walk away from my laptop. My legs felt weak, my vision blurred at the edges. This man, the one who'd lectured me on cutting back on grocery spending, who'd vetoed every vacation I'd suggested because we needed to be smart with money, had been bleeding us dry. For what? For someone who wasn't even his wife? I forced myself to sit back down and keep going. The credit card statements revealed even more. Cash advances I'd never authorized. He had his own card on our joint account. Charges at stores I'd never heard of. A recurring $39.99 monthly charge to some premium connection service that turned out to be an upscale dating app. He was paying a subscription fee to line up his next affair while still in the middle of this one. The sheer recklessness of it was staggering. We'd always been careful, always had a budget, always talked through big purchases, and here he was torching our financial stability like it meant absolutely nothing. Every time I'd suggested a weekend trip and he'd said we couldn't afford it. Every time I'd put off new work clothes because we were prioritizing savings. Every birthday, every anniversary where I'd kept my expectations low because we had long-term goals. He'd been lying through his teeth. Something hardened in me that night. The hurt was still there. God, it was still there, but it was getting buried under something colder, something more dangerous. Strategic clarity. This wasn't just about catching a cheater anymore. This was about protecting myself from someone who'd already proven he'd sacrifice everything we'd built together for whatever he wanted in the moment. I opened a new spreadsheet, started listing everything, every account, every asset, every debt, the house, the cars, his pension, my retirement fund. I documented every shady transaction, every hidden withdrawal, every lie that left a paper trail. If he'd been careful covering up the affair, he'd been sloppy as hell with the money, and that sloppiness was going to be his downfall. It was almost midnight when he wandered into the kitchen, half asleep, heading for the fridge. "Burning the midnight oil?" he mumbled, nodding at my laptop. "Just reviewing our accounts, making sure everything adds up."
He grabbed a bottle of water, yawned. "You're always so on top of that stuff. I don't know what I'd do without you." I watched him shuffle back towards the bedroom. He wasn't just cheating, he was gambling with our future. I called the attorney on a Thursday morning, right after he left for work. I'd found her through a discreet online search. No asking friends, no leaving a trail. Jennifer Martinez, specialized in high-asset divorces, 5-star reviews praising her thoroughness and discretion. Her office was 30 minutes outside our neighborhood, far enough that I wouldn't run into anyone we knew. "I need a consultation," I told her receptionist, "and I need it to stay completely confidential." They got me in that same afternoon. Jennifer's office was nothing like I'd imagined. No harsh lighting or intimidating leather chairs. It was warm, comfortable. She offered me tea and sat across from me with a yellow legal pad, her expression kind but professional. "Tell me everything," she said. So I did. I showed her the evidence I'd compiled, the affair timeline, the financial transactions, the deleted messages I'd recovered, the retirement loan, all of it, organized in a folder on my laptop like I was presenting a case study. She took notes, occasionally nodding, her face unreadable. When I finished, she sat back and looked at me directly. "You've done impressive work here," she said. "Most people come in with suspicions and emotions. You've come in with documentation. That matters." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now we talk about your rights, and we talk about strategy." She walked me through everything. Washington was a community property state. Anything acquired during the marriage got split 50-50, unless we could prove misconduct affected the finances. The affair itself wouldn't necessarily sway a judge, but the financial recklessness, the secret withdrawals, the retirement loan spent on another woman, that could make a difference. "Here's what I need you to do," Jennifer said, leaning forward. "Don't confront him yet. I know that's hard. I know every instinct is telling you to throw this in his face and demand answers." "I wasn't planning to," I said quietly. She smiled. "Good, because the moment you confront him, he'll start hiding assets. He'll get his own lawyer, he'll start moving money around. Right now, you have the advantage. He has no idea you know." "So I just keep pretending?" "You keep living your life normally while we prepare. Keep documenting everything. If you see new transactions, screenshot them. If he makes more withdrawals, note them. But don't change your behavior. Don't give him any reason to suspect." My stomach turned at the thought of going home and smiling at him like nothing was wrong, but I understood the logic. "One more thing," Jennifer said, leaning forward. "Open a separate bank account, in your name only, nothing joint. Start moving your paychecks there. You're legally entitled to protect your individual income." I did exactly that. The next day, I walked into a different bank across town and opened a personal checking account, rerouted my direct deposit, started building a safety net he couldn't touch. It felt like preparing for war. At home, I became a master of performance. I smiled when he walked through the door, asked about his day, made dinner, laughed at his jokes, initiated small talk about weekend plans and whether we needed to schedule the furnace maintenance. I watched him relax into the routine, completely oblivious, and I watched him get sloppy. He stopped being as careful with his phone, left it on the counter while he showered, forgot to clear his browser history, took calls in the next room with the door barely closed, his voice low but audible. "I know, I miss you too. Soon, I promise. She doesn't suspect anything." I stood in the hallway, frozen, listening to him reassure his girlfriend that his clueless wife had no idea. The rage that burned through me was white hot, but I didn't move, didn't react. I walked calmly back to the kitchen and continued chopping vegetables for dinner. He came out 20 minutes later, all smiles. That was Mark from the office, still dealing with the Peterson account. "Sounds stressful," I said, handing him a glass of wine. "Oh, you have no idea." "Oh, but I did." Over the next few weeks, I systematically secured everything that mattered. I made copies of our mortgage documents, car titles, insurance policies. I printed hard copies and stored them at my friend Rachel's house, someone he barely knew and would never think to connect to this. I forwarded crucial emails to a private account he didn't have access to. I documented every time he lied about where he was going, every evening he came home late smelling of perfume that wasn't mine, every charge that appeared on our credit card for places he claimed he'd never been. Jennifer checked in weekly. "How are you holding up?" she asked during a call. "I'm fine," I said, and I meant it. I wasn't falling apart, I wasn't drowning in emotion. I was too focused for that, too driven by the need to ensure that when this all came crashing down, I'd be standing on solid ground. One night, he reached for me in bed, trying to initiate intimacy. I couldn't do it. I turned away gently, feigning tiredness. "You okay?" he asked. "Just exhausted," I whispered. "Long week." He kissed my shoulder and rolled over, asleep within minutes. I lay there in the dark, wide awake, thinking about everything I'd uncovered, everything I'd prepared. He thought my silence meant I was clueless. He thought my calm meant everything was fine. He mistook my calm for surrender.
I had the papers served on a Tuesday afternoon. He was home early for once, said he'd taken the afternoon off to catch up on things around the house. I knew better. She was probably busy, unavailable, so suddenly he had time for domestic life. The doorbell rang at 3:47 p.m. "I'll get it," I said, already knowing who it was. The process server stood on our porch, professional and efficient. "Documents for Michael Henderson." "He's right inside." I stepped aside and gestured toward the living room where my husband sat on the couch, scrolling through his phone with his feet up. He looked up, confused. "Can I help you?" "Michael Henderson?" the server asked. "Yeah?" "You've been served." He handed over the envelope and walked away. Just like that. I watched my husband's face as he stared at the envelope, watched the confusion morph into something else. Concern, then recognition. "What the hell is this?" His voice was tight. "Open it," I said, calmly. His hands actually shook as he tore it open. I stood near the doorway, arms crossed, watching every micro-expression flash across his face as he scanned the first page. Petition for dissolution of marriage. The room went silent except for the rustle of paper. When he finally looked up at me, his face was pale. "This is a joke, right? This is some kind of—" "It's not a joke." "Rachel, what the hell is going on? Where is this coming from?" He stood up, papers crumpling in his grip. "We can talk about whatever's bothering you. We don't need lawyers. We don't need—" "Sit down, Michael." Something in my tone made him freeze. I'd never spoken to him like that before. Flat, cold, final. He sat. "I know about the affair," I said simply. The color drained completely from his face. "What? Rachel, I don't know what you think you—" "Jessica Tanner, the marketing coordinator from your office. You've been seeing her for 11 months. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. "I know about the hotels, the restaurants, the flowers you bought her, the Tiffany bracelet." I took a step closer. "I know about the $16,000 you drained from our savings, the retirement loan, the reduced 401k contributions." "Rachel, I know everything, Michael, and I have proof." He stood up again, anger replacing the shock. "You went through my phone, my emails? What the hell gives you the right to—" "What gives you the right to cheat on me?" My voice didn't rise, didn't waver. "What gives you the right to spend our money on another woman, to lie to my face every single day?" "I can explain." "I don't want your explanations." He switched tactics. I watched it happen in real time. The anger melted into something softer, manipulative. He stepped toward me, hands up like he was approaching a frightened animal. "Baby, listen, I made mistakes, I know that, but we can fix this. We can go to counseling, we can work through—" "No." "Rachel, please, 12 years. We've been together for 12 years. You're going to throw that away?" "You threw it away the moment you decided she was worth more than our marriage." His jaw clenched. I could see him recalibrating, searching for the angle that would work, the version of me he thought he knew, the one who'd believe his promises, who'd give him another chance, who'd prioritize keeping the peace over protecting herself. That version didn't exist anymore. "You don't want to do this," he said, his voice dropping low, almost threatening. "Divorce is messy, expensive. It'll ruin both of us. I'm willing to take that risk." Rachel,
The mediation hearing was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a gray Wednesday in October. I arrived 15 minutes early with Jennifer, both of us carrying briefcases full of documentation. Organized tabs, highlighted sections, a timeline printed on poster board showing every hotel visit, every withdrawal, every lie mapped out in neat rows. Michael showed up 10 minutes late with his attorney, Tom Richardson, some guy he'd found through referral who looked perpetually annoyed to be there. My husband wore his best suit, the navy one he saved for important presentations, like this was just another performance he could charm his way through. He wouldn't look at me. We sat on opposite sides of a long conference table in front of Judge Patricia Morrison, a no-nonsense woman in her early 60s with reading glasses on a chain and zero patience for theatrics. "Let's begin," she said, opening the file in front of her. "We are here to discuss asset division and terms of dissolution. Mrs. Henderson, your attorney filed first. Let's hear your position." Jennifer stood, calm and precise. "Your Honor, my client is seeking an equitable division of assets with consideration for financial misconduct during the marriage. We have documentation showing Mr. Henderson systematically withdrew funds from joint accounts and retirement savings to finance an extramarital affair spanning 11 months. Tom Richardson shifted in his seat. Michael's jaw tightened. Jennifer continued. "We're requesting the court review evidence of 43 separate transactions totaling $28,000 in marital funds spent on hotels, gifts, dining, and travel with a third party. Additionally, Mr. Henderson took a $12,000 loan against his 401k and reduced his retirement contributions without Mrs. Henderson's knowledge or consent." She slid the first exhibit across to the judge. Bank statements with every suspicious charge highlighted in yellow. Judge Morrison put on her glasses and began reading. The room fell silent except for the sound of pages turning. Michael leaned over and whispered something to Tom, who waved him off and scribbled notes on a legal pad. "Mr. Richardson?" the judge said, not looking up. "Response?" Tom cleared his throat. "Your Honor, while my client acknowledges marital difficulties, we dispute the characterization of financial misconduct. Mr. Henderson's withdrawals from joint accounts were within his legal right as a co-holder. The retirement loan was a personal financial decision, made with marital assets," Jennifer interjected smoothly, "and there's no legal requirement for spousal approval on individual 401k loans." Judge Morrison set down the bank statements and looked directly at Michael for the first time. "Mr. Henderson, did you inform your wife about the loan before you took it?" Michael straightened. "No, Your Honor, but did you discuss reducing your retirement contributions with her?" "We didn't specifically discuss it, but—" "And these withdrawals," she tapped the highlighted sections. "The Peninsula Hotel, Mastro's Steakhouse, Cartier, were these expenses related to marital activities or shared with your wife?" The silence stretched out. "No, Your Honor," he finally said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Then let's move on to the affair timeline." She gestured to Jennifer. Jennifer presented the second exhibit. Printed text messages, recovered emails, hotel receipts matched with calendar dates he'd claimed to be working late or out of town on business. The poster board timeline went up on an easel, 11 months of deception laid out in color-coded rows. I watched Michael's face as Jennifer walked through it. March, first overnight stay at the Marriott downtown.
April, romantic dinner at Kenlease, $340. May, shopping trip, Nordstrom charges totaling $890. June, a weekend getaway to San Juan Islands while he'd told me he was at a conference in Portland. Every lie, every cover story. Exposed. His attorney looked increasingly uncomfortable, flipping through his own copies of the evidence with an expression that said his client had definitely not been honest with him about the scope of this mess. Judge Morrison studied the timeline without expression, then turned back to the financial records. Mr. Richardson, does your client dispute any of these documented transactions? Tom glanced at Michael, who shook his head slightly, defeated. No, Your Honor. And the affair itself? Another pause. Michael's hands were clenched on the table in front of him. My client acknowledges the relationship, Tom said carefully. The judge made a note, then looked at both attorneys. I'm going to recommend we proceed to settlement negotiations with these factors in consideration. Mr. Henderson's undisclosed financial decisions and use of marital funds will be weighted in the asset division. Michael's face went red. Your Honor, Tom put a hand on his arm. Don't. But Michael couldn't help himself. This is ridiculous. I made mistakes, but she's acting like I'm some kind of criminal. We both contributed to problems in the marriage. She was distant. She stopped making an effort. Mr. Henderson, the judge's voice cut through the room like a blade. I don't particularly care about your justifications for infidelity. What I care about is that you took $28,000 in marital funds and spent it on someone who wasn't your wife. You borrowed against shared retirement assets. You reduced your retirement contributions to your 401k without disclosure. She closed the file and looked at him over her glasses. Those aren't relationship problems. Those are financial choices, and they will be factored in my recommendations. Michael slumped back in his chair. All the confidence, all the charm, all the manipulation, it drained out of him like air from a punctured tire. For 11 months he'd looked at me like I was stupid, like I'd never figure it out, like I'd just accept whatever scraps of attention he threw my way and be grateful. Now, sitting across from me in this conference room, with a judge reviewing his betrayals line by line, he finally understood. I'd never been clueless. I'd been gathering ammunition. He thought silence meant weakness. It meant preparation.
The settlement came through 6 weeks later. Fair division of assets. I got half the house equity, enough for a solid down payment on my own place, half the retirement accounts, minus the loan he'd have to repay himself, and because of the documented financial misconduct, the judge ordered him to reimburse me $14,000 from his personal funds for the marital money he'd spent on the affair. Jennifer called it a win. I called it justice. I signed the papers on a Friday afternoon in her office, my hand steady. No tears, no second guessing. Just my signature, clean and final. Closing a chapter I was ready to leave behind. Michael tried texting me that night, then calling. I blocked his number after the third attempt. There was nothing left to say. I found an apartment 3 weeks later. A small one-bedroom in a neighborhood I'd always loved but we'd never considered because he thought it was too urban and not practical for a family. It had hardwood floors, big windows that let in morning light, and a tiny balcony overlooking a tree-lined street. It was perfect. Moving day was surprisingly easy. I didn't have much. I'd left him most of the furniture we'd bought together. I didn't want the couch where he'd sat and lied to my face. Didn't want the bed we'd shared while he was texting her goodnight. I took what mattered. My books, my clothes, my grandmother's quilt, the coffee maker I'd bought with my first paycheck. I started over with space and silence. The first morning in my new place, I woke up at 6 a.m. to sunlight streaming through the bedroom window. No one beside me, no tension in my chest wondering where he'd been the night before or who he was texting. Just quiet. I made coffee and sat on my balcony in an old sweatshirt, watching the city wake up. For the first time in over a year, I felt like I could breathe. Therapy helped. I'd started seeing Dr. Patel 2 months before the divorce was finalized, and I kept going after. She helped me untangle the hurt from the anger, the betrayal from the relief. You protected yourself, she told me during one session. A lot of people in your situation react emotionally and lose leverage. You stayed strategic. That takes incredible strength. It didn't feel strong, I admitted. It felt like survival. Sometimes they're the same thing. She was right. I started rebuilding in small ways, reconnected with friends I'd lost touch with during the marriage, took a weekend trip to the coast by myself, painted my bedroom walls a deep teal color Michael would have hated, bought fresh flowers every Sunday just because I wanted them. I didn't date, wasn't ready, wasn't interested. I was too busy remembering who I was outside of being his wife. Some nights, I'd think about that moment at 2:47 a.m. when everything changed, when I could have woken him up screaming, could have thrown his phone across the room and demanded answers right then and there. I'm glad I didn't, because reacting would have given him control of the narrative. He would have made excuses, manipulated the situation, played the victim. He would have had time to hide money, delete evidence, spin the story to make himself look better. My silence gave me power. It gave me time to prepare, to document, to protect myself. It gave me leverage when it mattered most, and it gave me the outcome I deserved, not because I screamed the loudest, but because I planned the smartest. I don't hate him anymore. Honestly, I barely think about him, but I do think about that version of myself who lay in the dark next to a man who'd betrayed her and chose strategy over emotion, who turned pain into precision. She saved me. And now, sitting in my sun-filled apartment with my coffee and my quiet Saturday morning, I understand something he never did. He feared my anger. He should have feared my silence. If you stayed with this story all the way to the end, I truly appreciate your time. Go ahead and like the video and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do. We share powerful, real-life inspired stories here every single day, and I'd love to have you with us for the next one.